Hello, welcome back to the Inside Elland Road podcast with me, Joe Donoghue, and YEP chief football writer Graham Smith. The Comeback Kings did it again on Monday night, which turns out is a fantastic night to play football. Slow start to Bramall Lane made way for one of Leeds United's most famous derby wins in recent memory. Junior Firpo, Autanaka and Joel Piru with the goals, but the 3 points were savoured and enjoyed by each and every person in that away end, and certainly further afield, including two Leeds directors. Lots to get through in this week's episode, but first, Graham, would you like to maybe apologise to the listeners for having the gall to spend half term with your nearest and dearest?
Sometimes I have to see my other family, but I was thinking about you once or twice, maybe. I just felt like Monday to Monday, that's a great big gap, half term, great opportunity to get out amongst it, and I've really enjoyed my half term. really enjoyed it. It was great.
Yeah, really know how to pick them, don't you? Because there was nothing that happened last week. Maybe nothing that concerned a certain Leeds United journalist who also happens to have an affinity towards, I don't know, Rangers, perchance. I could have definitely relied on some sort of guidance on that sort of thing. But no, just very grateful for the opportunity to take the reins. Should we start with Sunderland, because that was the game that we previewed. And it turned out that we previewed it quite accurately, correctly predicting that 3 defenders would get yellow carded, correctly predicting the scoreline, that it would finish 2-1, and also predicting that Luke O'Nien would get up to some nonsense and daft stuff by climbing on the back of an opposition player, all of which happened in that game. We didn't envisage the 2-1 victory coming in the manner that it did. But I think if you were going to take a 2-1 win against a potential promotion rival, you'd do it exactly like Leeds did.
Turns out, Joe, we know our shit. Yeah. What a night at Elland Road. I mean, just incredible, really. I was saying to someone this week that it was one of those games where you almost can't believe what you're seeing, in those late stages. You actually can't. And it's a nightmare. It's very, very funny, actually, for a journalist, because you look along the row and there's all the national journalists furiously rewriting their intros and their match reports that need to be with the paper in the next 20 minutes. But that was a game in which set pieces were a problem for Leeds. Ilya Gruev's delivery just wasn't great, and even if his delivery was decent, they weren't attacking it, weren't getting first contact. And so when he brought on Rothwell and Struijk, it was obvious that was one of the things Farke was targeting. He's bringing on Leeds' best player for attacking dead balls and their best deliverer of dead balls, and the quality of the delivery just shot up. And Pascal Struijk got himself there, and just incredible scenes. One of the great nights at Elland Road, really, and a chance for this Leeds team. I mean, obviously, if they could have chosen, they'd have just walloped them 7-0. But it was a chance for this Leeds team, having gone behind, to a poor concession, really, to show a different side of themselves, that they can fight back, that they can keep going to the end, that they are able to exhaust the team. Sunderland were out on their feet. I mean, how many times did Dan Ballard just punt it away, either in straight into the stands or just downfield, almost out of exhaustion, mental and physical exhaustion, because Leeds just kept coming in that second half and eventually ground them down. And I thought Rothwell had got it, the second goal, but turns out when we saw the replays that Struijk had managed to get his enormous bounce on it and get himself a second goal. And thank God for Largi Ramazani and his great big shank of a shot.
Yeah, it was possibly one of the more fortunate things. But, we've heard, how many times this season have we heard Daniel Farke talk about how, in a promotion race, you need a little bit of luck. And I'm not saying that Leeds' comeback in Sunderland was luck. They were good value for it. But the individual moments like that, if Ramazani connects with that properly and gets it on target, Patterson probably saves it. And then, it's the game finishes 1-1, which is an absolutely fine result. As we were saying beforehand, nothing gets decided in those 2 games, in the Sunderland and Sheffield United games. But something was decided, and it was Leeds were going to take all 3 points. The thing that really stuck with me afterwards, I was looking at the shot map that Leeds had, and pretty much all of their shots were taken. There was just a massive vacuum in the center of the penalty area where Leeds hadn't had a shot. But pretty much, I think they'd had one. It was like a very, I mean, it was a deft Jan James header that didn't really have much power behind it. Up until the 88th minute, when Strike levels the game, they'd pretty much not had an opportunity. So Sunderland had kept them at bay. All of the shots were, the origin points were on the edge of the penalty area or sort of around the penalty area, places where you're not going to get good opportunities. And then there were just 2 goals from within the 6-yard box, and ultimately Leeds ground them down. And that was the topic of this, or rather last week's Inside Elland Road newsletter, which somebody excellently stood in for the usual author of that newsletter, and the title of that was The Inevitability Factor, which I honestly could not have hoped to have written anything more prescient before what happened at Bramall Lane, because I said, if you come out at Leeds and you attack and you score, there's a chance that you'll be pegged back, because this team have shown time and time again that they're capable of coming back from losing positions. If you sit back and withstand the pressure, they'll find a way. They'll bring Pascal Strike on. If you don't defend at all, they'll wallop you 7-0. There's an inevitability about this Leeds team this year. And I suppose that takes us on nicely to Sheffield United and Bramall Lane. Again, another game that we said in private, like, look, it doesn't really matter if they don't win, but they did, and they did it in even more remarkable style than they managed 7 days earlier.
Yeah, incredible, really, just incredible scenes for the second Monday run-in. I do hope, though, that they don't petition the EFL and Sky to put all their games on Monday nights, because that is when I'm supposed to play football, just 100 yards down the road from Bramall Lane. I was pining for the 6-a-side surface. I certainly was for the first 20 minutes as Sheffield United set about Leeds with a vigour. We haven't seen many teams do that to Leeds this season, and they absolutely rattled them, which made it an even better comeback for me. Out of the 2 comebacks, this was the better one, because Leeds were properly under the cosh. I mean, Meslier, it was one of those games where you thought, oh dear, his head's gone here early, because a couple of drop catches, and then the goal where he scrambles it into his own net. Yes, there were a lot of players culpable for that goal. I mean, Gruev's role was not... Gruev didn't cover himself in glory with the way he reacted to the ball into midfield. Dan James didn't get anywhere near Brereton Diaz to stop the cross, and he's a lot quicker than Ben Brereton Diaz. Joe Rodon lets Callum O'Hare, little tiny Bucky O'Hare, run off the back of him and head the ball towards goal. Meslier fingertips it onto the bar. Probably you would, if nothing else happens, that's a world-class save. But the ball comes down, and Tyrese Campbell reacts quicker than Junior Firpo, nods it back towards goal, and then Meslier scrambles it in, quite clumsily, and an own goal. And then after that, he passed the ball straight out of play, and the Blades fans were on him. Blades had all the momentum because the Leeds midfield couldn't get to grips with him. Gruev was giving the ball away quite a lot, and the Blades were just building a real head of steam. And you thought this could be a bad night. But to Leeds' credit, they really steadied themselves. And even if the second half of that first half, it wasn't sparkling football from Leeds by any stretch, but it was better. Solomon started to get into it. He was giving Harry Clark a really horrible time. Clark didn't know if he was coming or going. He thought he was still on the open top bus at Ipswich, absolutely blitzed out of his skull with his shades on, because Solomon took him inside and outside, and Clark picks up an injury and has to be replaced, and they didn't really have a right back, so Chowdhury comes on. And the second half was just an example of this Leeds team when they really strangle a game and strangle an opponent, and they just, again, ground them down, kept going. Junior Firpo with a header that Ruud Gullit would be proud of that one. You know, he absolutely buried it. Great cross from James. Minutes earlier, maybe even only a minute earlier, I'd said James has been all right tonight, but the end product has been woeful. Just no end product whatsoever. And
regrettably, I think I agreed with you at the time.
yeah. And then he puts one on a sixpence. Just beautiful cross. Firpo with an even more beautiful header.
There's
And
a
at
great
that stage-
picture of Firpo just rising like a Dominican salmon. I've seen people describe him as. I didn't know that salmon were native to the Dominican Republic, but yeah, there's a great picture of him. And I think Ruud Gullit is a good comparison. Personally, wouldn't go Ruud Gullit. I'd maybe go a Lee Chapman, for example.
Well, I did that in my newsletter this week. I said that he channeled his inner Lee Chapman, who did score a thumping header against Sheffield United in a 3-1 win for Leeds once upon a time.
Going even further
from that
back, Chris Wilder made a couple of comparisons to that header, didn't he?
Yeah, he said he didn't want to say names because he wasn't sure people would remember them, kind of showing his age, but Bob Latchford and Joe Jordan. And then he said, "You'd remember them though, Popey."
In the middle of a press conference as well. Fantastic.
I am absolutely here for Chris Wilder's continued jibes at Adam Pope. It's you know what, actually, it's really nice that managers like Wilder, who've been around the block a bit, they remember people and faces, and he remembers people like Adam Pope and appreciates his presence at games and always greets him. I really like that. And actually, we'll come on to Wilder because I thought he covered himself in class, I think, after the game. But from 1-1, I think Wilder probably knows, well, he definitely knows Blades want to shake hands on a 1-1 draw right now, because they really didn't offer a great deal else. I mean, Meslier made a couple of stops. One was a tricky shot from distance through a crowd. But for me, there's only one winner at this stage. You know, once it goes 1-1, once the way end has exploded like it did, Leeds are going to go for the kill. And it took them until the 89th minute. But once the second goal goes in, it was just, you know, it's believable, but unbelievable.
Another set play, Rothwell delivery, strike with first contact, and I've watched the Tanaka goal.
No. Firpo with first contact.
Was it Firpo with first contact?
Yeah. It looked for all the world, because at the time I said Firpo with a header, yeah, and both you and Baron Cross said strike. So I changed my mind, like an idiot, and changed it to strike. But on reflection, I mean, it looks like they're both very close to it, but it's Firpo actually that gets the glance on.
Okay.
And then Tanaka from 2 yards with just there's no rush from Tanaka to put that ball in the net. He wants to place the header deftly into the far corner, which showed incredible composure in the chaos that was the Blades box at that second.
He stoops, doesn't he? He just stoops to meet it, because it's at a really awkward height. Yeah. And he's also made a very good a striker's run, some might say, around the back. He's got free from his man. No one's picked him up. And yeah, it is a difficult skill, because as I say, it's a really awkward height, but to sort of guide it, it kind of gets a little bit of curl on it, you know, if that's even possible with a header.
Yeah, you're right.
But the spin of the ball, and it's just right in the postage stamp, right there. I think, is it above City Peck?
Yeah.
Who just can't quite get enough on it to keep it out. And I think Tanaka's celebration was my pick of the bunch. That was my favorite.
It was pure unbridled joy, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was like the away end just erupted, and you could sort of hear the seats slapping the back of the seat of the seat at Bramwell Lane in front of us, slapping the backrest. You could hear those just kind of like flipping up, and all the home fans sort of just thinking, yeah, you know what, that's it, we're done.
You know what?
There was probably still some of them heading for the exits when Joel Piroe rifled in that third as well.
Yeah. I was chatting to a Wednesday fan last night, and he said what really impressed him about Leeds was they got the second goal and thought, right, no, let's get another. You know, they smell blood, and it was the same against Sunderland. They scored against Sunderland to make it 1-1, and there was absolutely no thought in anyone's head that, all right, a point is a very decent result for us. It's a terrible result for Sunderland because they need to win this. Yeah. Good result for us. Let's shut it down. nobody was holding their arms out and saying, right, calm down. They wanted it and they went for it on both occasions. And when the ball gets to James, he doesn't take it in the corner. He looks to make something happen, goes inside this time, plays it to Peru, and what a strike. I mean, the fans were still celebrating Tanaka's goal when that goes in. You know, people are still picking themselves up off the floor or restoring themselves to the row that they originated in, and collecting their limbs when Peru sends that one in the back of the net. And for me, that's noise of the season. Have you listened back or watched the highlights? The noise the ball makes when it hits the net is noise of the season because it was just incredible.
I think in the celebration as well from the away end, maybe I'm romanticizing it a little bit too much, but it's almost like the second one was just pure unbridled, emotion and joy. The third one was almost like, Jesus, they've done it again. Like,
Yeah, there was a
that
disbelief,
kind of
like
there was a disbelief in
yeah,
it, in the
yeah.
sort of the response. It was
There
kind
is,
of yeah.
there's a different kind of noise to goal roars, depending on the goal that it is. And obviously, if it's a late, like 89th minute goal, it's like an explosion of joy. If it's a Luke Ayling on the volley from a Jack Harrison cross in off the bar, there's like an almost stunned, appreciative kind of, oh my God, has he really just done that? Like disbelief to the noise. And the third one was just, it was when Peru's ball hit the net, it was part ecstasy and part disbelief. Like I can't believe we've scored again.
Yeah.
Yeah, just incredible. And to do that 1 week after doing it against Sunderland, to do it twice is incredible. To do it twice against promotion rivals is incredible. But to do it at Bramall Lane after the way the game started was phenomenal. And it just, I don't know if it doesn't it obviously doesn't rubber stamp anything for Daniel Farke, but Leeds would have to really Leeds it up from here. 5 points clear of Sheffield United, 7 clear of Burnley. Was it 13 clear of Sunderland?
And they've got their goal difference is plus 28 on Sheffield United and plus 16 on Burnley. Like that's not being surpassed.
6 points clear, really, of Blades, and 8 clear of Burnley and 14 clear of Sunderland. So, just they've put themselves in an amazing position. This run of form has been incredible. 16 games without defeat, winning 5 on the bounce since the 0-0 at Burnley.
Yeah,
and the way they've reacted to each little, and you wouldn't even call Burnley a setback. Burnley was a fine result. It was just a horrible night for football. But the way they've responded to nights like that, or draws or defeats, has been really, really impressive. And I would be stunned now if something bad happened.
Yeah, it's something that I just can't see happening. That was part of the reason that I wrote the sort of the inevitability factor newsletter last week, was because they can't screw it up from here. Like, I know that there'll be people listening who will now just be cursing my very existence for actually speaking that. But
hope so, yeah.
Yeah, shut up. Actually, I'm going to go back to your goal roars point, because that's something really nice. That's an Inside Ellen Road exclusive that you don't get that on other podcasts. Debating the different types of goal noises.
Different timbre. There's a lovely timbre to the roar.
Oh, very nice. Good word use. I would say I'm going to get really technical with it here. So if there's any like audio nerds who are listening in, you might like this. But I think the third goal, that type of disbelief celebration, I would say that the peak amplitude is a lot higher for a shorter period of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just explain it to me like I'm 5.
Okay, so it's the celebration is at a higher pitch, but for only a brief moment, and it's a little bit like the audible gasps are just more of and you've kind of let yourself go to more of that sort of right? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I confused myself doing it.
If there was a word that the 2,800 away fans all said when Tanaka's went in, it was yes. If there was a word that they all said when Peru's went in, it was oh. Like that for me was but but like a very high pitched oh.
Yeah.
Like if you're in the kitchen and you've just opened a jar of coconut milk and you've poured it into the pan, but it slips out your hand, right? But you control it in one, flick it up and volley it into the bin. The noise you make as it goes into the bin, that was the noise they made when Peru's ball hit the net.
You ever done that? Just out of interest?
Now and again.
Yeah. Do you have Sergio Mendes the "Oh why on in the background as well, or is that just playing in your head? Yeah, Joga Bonito. Yeah, it was Joga Bonito at Bramall Lane. And you even had Rafinha celebrating the result, congratulating Pascal Struijk in the comments section of his Instagram. Jaden Bogle, he also had a bit of a cheeky jibe maybe back at the supporters. I think it was justified as well. He was getting absolute pelters.
He's taken dogs abuse for 180 minutes against them, and as he would have done had he left Leeds for another club, that was rival to Leeds. My favourite Bogle bit in the game was when he went to take a throw in the first half, and a Blades fan had got hold of the ball in the stand that we were in, and Bogle was asking for it back, and he wasn't giving it back, and Bogle was just kind of laughing, and then the fan really angrily slammed the ball down onto the ground. Like, holding onto the ball is funny. Not giving it back to your former player and booing him is pretty funny. But then slamming the ball down with that much anger, Bogle wins that exchange.
I was going to say, how have you lost the upper hand in that exchange?
Yeah, you had the upper hand and then you lost it. And it wasn't the only time that somebody lost it in that stand during that game, unfortunately.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I'm not going to say that it tarnished things, because I think it sounds as though it was dealt with pretty promptly. And I imagine that the mesh or the melee of bodies that were sort of behind the Leeds dugout after Peru's third that were agitated, shall we say, by what had gone on, it seemed to be dealt with pretty quickly. However, it is the first time, I think, that I've seen somebody be manhandled to the floor in a manager's technical area.
Yeah, I mean, there have been previous incidents where people have...
Oh no, that's such a lie. No, it's not.
You think about the Eddie Howe incident.
Howe at Elland Road, yeah.
You think about Tynecastle and Neil Lennon. Somebody went for him, didn't they? In fact, they got to him, didn't they? Yeah, but I think the impressive thing for me was that he didn't make it to the technical area of his own volition. He was transported to the technical area.
His feet didn't touch the ground, shall we
say? Just a reminder, I think, for me, that if we do, as we sometimes do, have little interactions with Mr. Martin Sykes, that always just to stay on the polite side of banter, because
whenever I'm in Martin Sykes' presence, I feel like Jimmy Bullard in that clip where he's just
Duncan Ferguson.
Duncan Ferguson. Like, I'm kind of slightly in awe of you, Mr. Head of Security. Slightly I'm also afraid. A bit terrified.
I think, for anyone who didn't know or didn't see, something kicked off between the backroom staff behind the dugout, where some of the subs might have been, maybe some of the analysts or technical staff or medical staff and security staff for Leeds United. And a Blades fan made his way across the aisle, across the steps into that area. But that was the last movement he made that was voluntary, because then a Leeds member of staff had him, Martin Sykes came in, and between them, they just shifted him straight down the steps into the technical area and placed him upon the floor so that stewards could come and take him away. And then stewards kind of flooded the area. The proximity of the Leeds staff to the fans, I wouldn't say that it makes something like that inevitable, but I can imagine that being that close, they'll have been taking a fair bit of flack. Some of it will have been good-natured and funny, and some of it might not have been. And then when that goal has gone in, given that they've only just been celebrating a goal as well, given that home fans are thoroughly fed up with what they're seeing by that stage, and the glee that's coming from the away fans and the away staff, it's maybe not such a surprise that a temper or two have gone and that heads have gone. but it does make you think that maybe, just maybe, there needs to be a little bit more of a stewarding presence in that area. And it wasn't the only kind of wasn't the only moment that could have got nasty. There was that home fan that approached the perimeter of the pitch, caught on camera, because away fans had spilled onto the perimeter behind the goal in celebration of the goals. The subs were all down there, and this home fan comes down the steps, kind of looks like he wants to have words with somebody, only really then gets to exchange words with Martin Sykes, who came down to usher away James DeBio and a couple of others. But that could have been a moment that we were writing a little bit more about than we did. But as it turns out, South Yorkshire Police say there was only 2 arrests made. One of those was for entering the stadium drunk. How drunk would you have to be to get arrested for entering a stadium drunk? And that person will appear in court. And the other
you
was...
You might find out at Home Park on the 3rd of May, Graham.
First hand. And then there was an arrest on suspicion of assault that was dealt with by a community resolution, which is basically when a victim of assault is happy for it not to go through the courts and is happy to have it dealt with by way of maybe an apology, or I don't know, the culprit has to write 50 lines, "I will not commit assault." But it's basically for the more minor incidents, and it means that it doesn't all get clogged up in the justice system. So so that was dealt with fairly quickly, and we've heard no more about the incident in the technical area. So I think Leeds were quite happy to move on from it without causing too much of a fuss, and I imagine Sheffield United will be more than happy to move on with it.
Have you seen the video from quite a few years ago now, where some Australian guy's dog is in a headlock with a kangaroo?
Yes.
I would liken the incident, how it played out, to that, for anyone who wasn't aware of what happened. Because I know there was a video of just loads of bodies rushing around that area afterwards, taken from the away end. So obviously not very close. It was very unclear to see what had gone on. From our view, which was a little bit more aerial, from our vantage point, that was kind of the view that we had. I'm not going to say that you were cheering. I'm not going to say that. But what I will say that is, you, as a fan of violence, look, it was you were interested in what was happening down there.
I took a keen interest because I'm a paid observer of the game and everything that happens around the game, Joe. So I just took a professional interest in the incident. I'll tell you what was impressive, though, that amid all those emotions and a niggly game where, there were a few moments. Solomon had a couple of moments. Sousa does what Sousa does and kind of clamped down on people physically now and again. Some big tackles went in. The two teams kept a lid on it, didn't they? And so too did the two sets of management, because at full time, Chris Wilder is waiting in the tunnel to shake the hands of every Leeds staff member and congratulate them on the win. Yeah. He plays the panto villain role pretty well at times, Chris Wilder. But, and at the risk of getting some angry letters and emails, in an alternate universe, I could have seen Chris Wilder managing Leeds United and actually winning them over, because he would say and do everything in his power to kind of defend the badge, defend the club. And I think he would fit the whole "we're Leeds United, everyone hates us" thing. I think he would wear that really well. Like he does the chip on the shoulder thing quite often, but he also does the us against the world thing quite often, the siege mentality thing. And also he knows how to get results in the Championship. And, Daniel Farke said after the game, Sheffield United couldn't have a better manager right now than Chris Wilder. The same is probably true of Leeds United. They couldn't have a better manager for this situation than Daniel Farke. But if not Daniel Farke, Chris Wilder would be in the top 2 or 3 alternatives.
Can't wait to edit that out for the safety of you and your family, because we obviously cannot publish that. No, I see where you're coming from.
He likes Leeds. He
gets it, right?
He likes the rivalry, but he likes Leeds. He definitely does, and he's he's definitely regretful of those Muppets from Leeds comment when he was half cut, celebrating promotion. Doing an interview when you're merry is probably not a very wise thing. It made for great content at the time for Sheffield United and for the local press and whatnot. But I mean, Sheffield United as a club were steaming for about 6 days straight, 7 days straight. So any microphone was any hot mic was a dangerous one. But the way I think he's moved to kind of address that. He's made it clear what a big club Leeds is, and he's put forward his admiration for the club. He'll never be able to win back round a lot of people who don't like him because of the stuff he's said in the past. But he clearly has an awful lot of admiration for Leeds, and particularly this Leeds under Daniel Farke.
Yeah, we are doing this week's episode in 2 parts again because we've got Daniel Farke's press conference this afternoon. So there will be a second part. But before that, I would like to just continue talking about the Sheffield United game. There was a story that you wrote based on a post which somebody made on Twitter or X, and it was a pilot who was getting a notification as to the score of the match whilst 37,000 feet in the air, which I thought was really novel. It's something you don't see every day, and again, it speaks to the love and affection that people have across the world for Leeds United.
Yeah, he was flying from London, I believe, on North Atlantic to Cape Town, and it was 37,000 feet above Nigeria. And he used his data link system to type a message back to headquarters and ask if they could pass on the Leeds United Sheffield United score, which then duly came back. And he took pictures of his screen and stuck it on X. Really tickled me that. I thought that's absolutely brilliant. What a unique way to find out. Basically using teletext in the sky to find out the Leeds United score. Rob Hensby's his name. So thanks very much for drawing our attention to that. A couple of nice stories actually from the Sheffield United game about where people followed it from, because Leeds United had what would you call him? Property development royalty in their midst, boardroom royalty in their midst, because Pete Lowy, who is a regular fixture at games this season, he flies over from LA routinely, is often seen at Elland Road and has been seen at away games in the director's box as well. He didn't fancy the comfy seats at Bramall Lane, so he, I believe his partner and Angus Kinnear, the club's CEO, were amongst the away fans in the away end, which opens up tremendous possibilities. Did somebody crowd surf over the top of Pete Lowy, heir to a billionaire's fortune? Did he get displaced from his seat during the celebrations? Was he flicking the V's at anyone during the aftermath of the celebrations? Did he bring pyro in? Obviously not for legal purposes, but you get the idea that I'm the picture I'm painting. Yeah, quite a different match day experience, I would imagine, for him than many of those he's used to.
Yeah. I would you say that will be the most memorable game of the season, potentially?
Yeah, I think when we look back on this season in 5 years' time or whatever, it'll be one of the ones that sticks out. When you think back to the Bielsa season, Pablo's late goal at Swansea is the one that I always think about, and Luke Ayling's goal against Huddersfield is another. You remember really good goals, but you remember really big moments, really moments that felt consequential at the time. And there was probably none more so than Pablo's goal at Swansea. And I think beating your nearest rivals, beating the team in second with 2 late goals, 89th and 90th minutes away from home, it's just about as good as it gets. For me, it's better than winning 7-0. The 7-0 was magnificent, but it's a different thing. One is, relaxing on Christmas Day with your loved ones around you and a glass of your favorite drink in the warmth, and it's just long, relaxing, leisurely played out dopamine. The other is like a thrill ride, your favorite roller coaster. Just incredible, really. I can't imagine that many of the people in that away end got to sleep with any ease whatsoever when they got home.
Yeah, I think even longer than 5 or 10 years. So maybe you won't get there, but certainly in the I think it'll be in the 15 to 20-year range where people will still be talking about that night at Bramall Lane, provided that they do go on and achieve what we expect them to achieve. And again, not getting carried away, not counting chickens before they've hatched. But you look at the championship table right now, and it's Leeds in first, of course. Do not need to explain that to anyone. But you look at the remaining fixtures that Leeds have, and they still have to play Middlesbrough in 11th, Millwall in 12th, QPR in 14th, Preston in 15th, Swansea in 16th, Portsmouth in 17th, Oxford in 18th, Stoke in 20th, Plymouth in 22nd, and Luton in 24th. That's a very kind run.
So what you're saying is all we're going to see from here into the end of the season is low blocks. Really great, Joe.
Yeah.
Really
That's
great.
what we're going to see. Apart from maybe towards the end of the season when teams around the bottom, they need to go out and get wins. They might come and have a go a little bit more. But
I wouldn't. If I could just advise them, if I could offer them any advice, it would be don't go for it, because you're far better playing with a low block and trying to nick something on a counter from a free kick around halfway that you pump into the box than you are opening up at Elland Road, because you'll get pumped, absolutely pumped.
Well, yeah, and they've gone 16 games unbeaten now, which is the longest run since the First Division
92.
title win. Yeah, in '92. How many more can they go?
I don't want to say, because then West Brom will beat them and it'll all come crashing down around our ears. But when I was repeatedly saying every week that they had this kind of run in them, and when you were refuting it week
Just
after
pat
week,
myself on the back again. There we go. Yeah,
when you were scoffing,
I wasn't. Like this is revisionist again. There's
somebody can listen back to the first time that I said
barefaced lies that you've told on this podcast this season.
Someone can dig out the clip, bring up the clip. Yeah, this is the kind of thing I had in mind. Anything more than this is just a bonus, really. So if Leeds lose, they might lose a game between now and the end of the season. They might well lose one or two or three even. I still don't think it's going to change anything. I still think, and as I said to one of our counterparts as we left the press box on Monday night, I still think it'll be a Leeds United Sheffield United 1-2. For Burnley, yeah, defensively incredible, but not scoring enough goals. And if they slip up defensively, can they score enough goals? Yeah, they beat Sheffield Wednesday 4-0, but actually, it sounds like Sheffield Wednesday were fairly aggrieved to have lost by that scoreline, and that's a bit of an outlier, that result. Well, it feels like an outlier rather than a trend. If they do slip up defensively, can they score the goals to get the points to rectify that? If I was a Burnley fan, I'd be a little bit apprehensive about the playoffs, because playoff games can be wild, and your defensive shape and structure might not protect you from the madness. And what if you do need to score 2 goals or 3 goals? Yeah, I think it'll be Leeds Blades 1-2.
Shall we talk about a different kind of 1-2? And that was the stuff that came out in the week about Parag Marath and the 49ers and the potential investment in Rangers. I mean, that's we've been discussing it a little bit over the past week, and it's definitely where the 49ers have identified it's a club that has the potential to, or rather the consortium, shall we say, which the 49ers have individuals a part of. They've identified that it is a club similar to Leeds in that it has a global fan base. It has, unlike Leeds, a reasonably good chance of getting regular European football, but crucially, very similar, huge growth potential. I'm fascinated by it because it's very rare that you see clubs of that stature, go through takeovers. So, and for it to be linked so closely to what we cover every day with Leeds and individuals that we're familiar with in sort of the business side of things, it's intriguing to see it reach this stage.
Yeah. I don't know who this Marath bloke is you keep talking about, but Parag Marathi is definitely involved.
See, I keep getting it wrong, right?
I know, and I love it. I love it so
getting
much.
mixed up.
You know what? If I very, very briefly take off my professional hat and speak personally, the the idea of 49ers Enterprises taking over at Rangers is actually quite an attractive one to me, because of the sensible and sober way in which they've governed at Leeds so far. I think if they're going to come to be seen as very good owners at Leeds, I think that will have been part of it. The fact that they make decisions without emotion, the fact that they kind of take the emotion out of it, the fact that they talk about stuff when it's done, and that's why they're not saying anything about this Rangers takeover at all. It hasn't come out from them, I would suggest. They don't make statements willy-nilly, and when you're a fan of a club who has been responsible for some incredible statements, and not incredible in a good way, and picking fights left, right, and center when we probably didn't need to pick fights, making life a little bit harder for ourselves, having instability at ownership level and infighting, and maybe too many cooks spoiling the broth. The idea of an ownership group with a background in sport, but also now in football, who've shown that they can make good decisions in terms of managerial appointments, in terms of recruitment, in terms of putting together a structure, that they have an idea of what needs to happen ground wise in order to, maximize the club coffers, and the fact that they have deep pockets. Those things are all very attractive. Putting my journalism hat back on, Parag, have you lost all control of your senses? I mean, I suppose somebody might have said that when they talked about taking over Leeds, because Leeds as a club it can be very emotionally fraught. It can be a club where if something insane is going to happen, it's probably going to happen at Leeds United. That's been the way of it for a long time at Leeds, and actually things have steadied, really, haven't they? Since they fully took over, things have felt a lot more. It's felt a little bit more like the adults have entered the room and calm has been restored. But Glasgow Rangers is another club. I guess this is where maybe some of the similarities come in, where things can be a bit emotionally fraught at times, and crazy things happen.
You got quite emotionally fraught when I made a San Fran and then some sort of suffix joke, which I'll leave to people's imaginations, because I know there might be people who have an affinity towards Rangers listening. And while I don't have a dog in the fight, I just thought it was funny, and it wound Graham up to no end. And I will be using it quite frequently. And you know what? Come the end of the season, I might use it.
Very funny. It was very funny. It made me laugh in an angry way.
France. Nope, not going to say it.
Yeah, don't say it. Don't say it. It's lazy. It's a lazy Celtic joke. But if anyone's going to give, it's the potential, isn't it? That's where the big similarity lies. The potential with Leeds United is massive. Huge club that has been underperforming its size, underperforming its fan base level. Glasgow Rangers exactly the same. They've been underperforming. They've had failure of recruitment, bad decision making, and financial. What is even the word? Meltdowns. Just crazy stuff. It needs stability. It needs a firm, steady hand on the tiller, and I think that's probably what 49ers Enterprises think they can bring to the situation. And also, they'll be looking at it thinking, if you get it right and you become truly competitive with Celtic, and you make that Champions League money properly up for grabs, if you get hold of it, Rangers and Celtic have both shown in recent decades that you can put together an era of dominance that sets you up. That actually there's a huge financial upside to that, not just a sporting upside to it. So it'll be an interesting one to follow. What it means for Leeds, I don't think it'll mean a whole lot. at all. I think Marathi has made it clear in his Financial Times Football Summit address that they would see them as standalone, just as 49ers, the NFL franchise, is a standalone thing from Leeds United. There's no crossover really, apart from some backroom staff. And
Well, hang on, isn't that where Jack Harrison's going in the summer on loan to the NFL?
You know what? I'd probably take him at Ibrox, and I'd take
That
Joel
must be
Peru.
bad intel. Sorry about that, everyone.
I'd take Joel Peru with him as well. I wouldn't see a great deal of crossover at all. You might see Greta Steinson having an involvement because he's now kind of in the bubble, not in the Leeds day to day, but in the 49ers football group. So I don't think there'd be really much impact at all. I guess it would just be down to Marathi to show that as chairman of Leeds and as such a big noise stateside in the other football, that he's not going to be like butter scraped over too much bread. He's not going to be spreading himself too thin. But you can surround yourself with very good people and very good appointments at boardroom level and at decision-making level so that doesn't become the case. And I certainly don't think Leeds have suffered at all from having a chairman who also has a huge interest in another sporting organisation. It's never felt like that. It's never felt like Leeds have absentee owners. The way Farke has always talked about it makes it sound like they're incredibly present. So as long as that was maintained, then I certainly don't think you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul, are you? And I think there's enough people with enough money involved in the investment vehicle that they should be able to sustain two football clubs that certainly will need a lot of investment this summer.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul is a fantastic analogy to use when you're discussing Rangers. Just putting that out there. Possibly the most perfect. We will reconvene after Daniel Farke's press conference for part 2 of this week's episode, hoping that there isn't too much to discuss because we've only left ourselves a short window to discuss what is said this afternoon. But we'll catch you after the break. All right, we're back for part 2 of the Inside Ellen Road podcast this week. In part 1, you may have just been listening to Graham saying very nice things about the 49ers. Couldn't possibly be about him getting free tickets at Ibrox in the future. You've just got back from the press conference where Daniel Farke said that Ethan Ampadu will not be undergoing surgery at this moment in time. He will be undergoing more conservative rehabilitation methods on the knee cartilage injury that he suffered. I suppose it's good news, even if it might be a stay of execution, that there is a chance at least that he will be able to play some part in the running.
I don't think, even if it needs surgery, I don't think they'll execute him. I think it'll probably just be knee surgery. I saw him today in the car park, moving pretty freely, it had to be said. So that was the first clue: the absence of moon boot, the absence of crutches, the fact that he still had 2 legs, all clues that he hadn't undergone surgery. And then Daniel Farke confirmed it in the press conference, saying that they're going the conservative route. It'll be therapy and rehab. And then there's a 50-50 chance, Farke reckons, that he's back after the March international break, which I think is around the same time that Max Wober is expected back. And it definitely could have been worse news. I mean, it's that whole, so you're saying there's a chance meme, isn't it? Insert that.
Well,
here.
Actually, if we're going to talk about memes, then the image of you spotting Ethan Ampadu in the car park has a lot of Alan Partridge, Dan, Ethan about it. As I imagine he would do exactly the same as what Dan did in that clip. It is there is a chance, but
yeah.
Do we really think that that's going to be? Because I've just written something which is along the lines of, well, yes, it's fine if he is playing at the end of the season, but ultimately, does that mean further down the line surgery will be needed because it's that type of injury?
Well, maybe not. I mean, he didn't require surgery on the other knee, did he? And he came back and played. And this is a different knee, so I don't know. We'll see. They must be weighing up not only this season but next.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens, I guess, is all you can say. But will they need him? That's the other question. Maybe at some point you decide, you know what, surgery would be better, and we don't need this fella because we're absolutely romping it. So let's just send him for surgery. But the hope will be, I think, that there is no urgent need for him to come back. But I think you always want to avoid surgery, don't you, if possible? I think the conservative route is probably always the preferable route.
Well, I mean, take the Pascal Struijk example from last season. He was initially out with a minor issue, which was the groin problem that he had around Boxing Day or just after Boxing Day, 2023. That eventually ruled him out for the entire season because at the end of March, he then had to have surgery because the conservative methods that had been applied didn't take. I suppose there is always the chance of that with Ampadu's knee cartilage. And yeah, I think, do they need him? I mean, if one of Pascal or Joe Rodon gets injured now, you are looking pretty sparse at centre half. But yeah, I mean, I still think they'd get by. They'd be fine. Yeah, it wouldn't be ideal to have Joshua Gilivogi in there or Ilya Gruev, who's obviously played centre half for Bulgaria. James DeBio would be an option as well, but I just think they'd be fine. Is what I'm trying to say. Leeds would be fine playing 10 players.
Yeah.
Have we considered that?
Yeah.
Can someone ask the EFL to just check that that's okay?
Well, to be fair, Ilan could just pass the ball 6 yards to himself and then fill in at left-sided centre back if needs be. Yeah, I think as long as nothing happens to Pascal, I'm not unduly concerned because that would be the what if then, and the potential what am I trying to say? Spoke in the wheel, fly in the ointment, fly in the soup, eyeball in the soup, whatever you want to say. All well-known sayings. Yeah, we'll see, but I think they'll probably get by.
Yes.
I don't see it robbing them of their ability to win 6 games. I think it would take probably 2 more really concerning injuries in big areas before the wheels started to even rattle, let alone fall off. Have we considered Manor Solomon as an option at centre back?
I'd love to see it. In fact, actually, why don't we play a game of which players do you think are the worst suited to different positions in the squad?
Worst centre backs in the squad. Well, you have to say that for a goalkeeper, you wouldn't want Solomon or Gnonto or Ramazani because they're all.
Ramazani could pull off the Rene Higuita scorpion kick save.
Yeah,
just tell him to do a backflip celebration.
They're all very wee men, and so you'd just be going for the top corner every time. Solomon lobbed again, 6th time this afternoon. Who would be the worst centre forward in the squad? You can answer that one.
I think the worst centre forward in the squad would be Ilya Gruev.
Yes, because his little legs would move too quickly at vital moments where you need to slow everything down.
He'd be scampering to get to the finish and inadvertently trod on the ball.
It's
absolutely. I should say as well, it's absolutely fine that that's not his game, because what he does do well, he does better than most players in this division. But what we're saying, Ilya, is if you're through on goal, just square it.
Yeah,
just square it.
Yeah, I'd hate to see Joel Peru as in the Bogle role, sprinting up and down. Wouldn't want to see that, and I wouldn't want to see Brendan Aronson as a 6.
Yes, I would not like to see that either. I think. What about a centre back pairing of Brendan Aronson and Manor Solomon?
Yeah,
with
Joshua Gilivogi left wing.
Joshua Gilivogi left wing. Patrick Bamford at left back.
Yeah. Peru at right back. Number 8. Number 8's a difficult one. Who would be a terrible number 8? I mean, it's box to box. Bit of creativity needed.
So I'm not doing this to do the Harry Potter trick where it's like I get the wand. For all the listeners, I've actually put a pen to my forehead in my thinking mode there, and I'm just worried that it's going to trigger Graham's Harry Potterisms. The last couple of weeks. In fact, we should address that you did not trash an Harry Potter Airbnb, despite the fact that we've been tagged in a lot of those posts.
Yeah, that was sent to me by a lot of people in my work life and in my personal life. Just to clarify, that was a different Airbnb in Watford. I am sure there are millions of them, Harry Potter themed. That one didn't look even half as Harry Potter themed, or even a quarter as Harry Potter themed as the one I slept in. Interestingly, Henry Naylor has tweeted me this afternoon to say, "Done the research for you, Graham. No Harry Potter B&B in Plymouth." He's Googled and attached a screen grab. But there is a themed restaurant. Table for two for you and the boy booked. So that's dinner sorted at a Harry Potter themed restaurant in Plymouth.
Very good.
Oh, God.
That is yeah, very funny.
Shall we get
Well
back
done
to the
Henry.
press conference? Patrick Bamford, not yet in team training, still feeling an awareness of the hamstring. So it's obviously not quite there. Farke didn't put a timeline on it. He doesn't want to add too much pressure. But he says Bamford's working desperately and doing everything he can. Again, it's not a situation of great urgency when you've scored more goals by far than anyone else in the division. And you've got Mateo Joseph to come off the bench. You could play Gnonto as a 9 or Dan James as a 9 in a retro hark back to Marcelo Bielsa's experimentations. So again, there's no disaster there. If he's not back in team training yet, there's no need to rush it. And that was it in terms of team news. There wasn't really a great deal else of note other than Daniel Farke talking about Tony Mowbray and how his side have probably had more possession in the last couple of games than any other team in the division.
It's an interesting observation, and it was something that I was considering looking at myself, was how West Brom have changed, or what the hallmarks are of their game since Mowbray came in. So for them being a possession side, it suggests it might be more of an open game than we were maybe anticipating. Again, probably plays to Leeds' strengths at Elland Road, but I think given their standing in the table, can't be underestimated. They will be a threat. On the other topics that were discussed during the press conference, Farke was asked about the reports linking Angus Kinnear with the soon-to-be vacant CEO role at Everton. What did he have to say about that?
He said in a lot of words, he said, "I'm not going to say anything about that."
What are you
basically,
going to say about it?
He did what he does when there's rumors or speculation about somebody interested in pilfering someone from Elland Road, and that is, it would be a bad do if nobody was interested in taking our people. Said as a young manager, he used to get a bit nervous about key players leaving or the interest, and felt that he had to address it. He clearly doesn't feel like he needs to address it now, and he doesn't talk about stuff that is not within his remit. And his line manager's position at the club is probably outside his remit. You could probably take a leaf out of Daniel Farke's book now and again and adopt a similar approach to addressing your.
Well, considering that you're not my line manager,
no, I distinctly remember turning down the opportunity to manage you to manage the unmanageable. Yeah, Kinnear to Everton. What I'd say is that there is so much smoke that something's on fire somewhere, and nobody at Leeds has come out with a bucket of cold water to say, actually, no, he hasn't got on a microphone in front of the assembled Elland Road staff and said, "I'm not leaving." Although I'm sure somebody will now knock up such a video using AI. But yeah, that will be an interesting situation for the 49ers to deal with when it comes about, as it seems likely at this stage. Do you want the role?
I don't want the role. I do have someone in mind for the role, although they are unfortunately tied up doing something else in the sphere of sports management. I think you'd be a good fit for the role because you know this club inside out now, and I mean, you it's possibly the perfect job for you, if not the Celtic CEO job.
Well, let me just see if we can square off Angus's responsibilities and see if it's inside or outside my capabilities. Appear on the square ball, tick. Write program notes, tick. Use a thesaurus, tick, and go in the away end now and again. I could do that. Is there anything else? Did I miss anything?
How far do you want to take this? That is the question.
The running of a multi-million, 100 and whatever million pound turnover business. Yeah, I'm not so sure.
Red button all of Graham Smith's phone calls. Tick.
Well, it would be your phone calls, wouldn't it? So tick. Yeah, that's a big job. Yeah. You know, Leeds in the Premier League, CEO of Leeds United in the Premier League is a big and very attractive job. They will not be short of candidates for that role.
What we could do is we could, do the role as a pair, double team it, and we could just split the salary. Like maybe 60 down my way, 40 down your way, because I obviously have the video editing and audio editing strings to my bow.
Like Roy Evans and Gerard Houllier, you mean?
Yeah, maybe a little bit like Evans and Houllier, yeah. Or like the Sweden manager at the managers at the Euro 2004. There's Lars Lagerbäck and someone else. There's a bit of niche football trivia for you. Someone else can get that name.
Everton, though, I mean, I guess the excitement of it is maybe the new stadium element and that kind of thing. What would be interesting, though, is if Leeds United are fishing in the same ponds when it comes to summer recruitment, But yeah, obviously there are things to be discussed between Everton and Leeds in order to let that happen. But there's obviously a desire, at least on the part of Everton, to make it happen. Otherwise, there wouldn't be quite so much being said in the national press. I mean, they could definitely have a conversation about Jack Harrison. There's a conversation to be had there. And now that he's, playing in a winning team, surely you're looking at a good 35 to 45 million. I'll tell you what, Angus, we'll knock off 5 million and we'll call it an even 40 for you.
I'm just imagining a long sort of grand old medieval dinner table and Angus Kinnear at one end negotiating a price for Jack Harrison, then getting out of his seat, running down to the other end of the table, sitting down and rejecting the offer before then running to the other end where he originally started from, and then submitting a counter offer or a counter proposal. That's how I imagine those negotiations will go.
Yeah.
Straddling the two roles.
One to watch. I tell you what, this summer could be a blockbuster summer at Leeds in terms of happenings, ins and outs. Lots of big decisions to be made. I would say, I don't want to say no one's safe. Like the 49ers are going to come along with a scythe and cull people left, right, and center. But I'm not sure that there's any real area in which you'd say they won't consider what needs to be done to make it more Premier League suitable. I think that kind of includes everyone and everything.
We'll get onto that in future episodes. We have obviously run out of time, or we've run over time this week on the Inside Ellen Road podcast. Before we do go, though, I'd like to, or rather, maybe you can recount the story from us getting out of the car at St Mary's Church in Sheffield on Bramall Lane. I remarked to you that this is actually the first time I've been into Sheffield city centre, which you couldn't believe. And no sooner had the words left my mouth than, and Graham, take it away. What did we witness?
We were coming around the corner of St Mary's Church, and out of the corner of my eye, in my peripheral vision, I noticed movement, and so I turned my head that direction, and I saw a gentleman. You know, when you see something and your brain very, very quickly sends a signal to say, something not right here, this isn't quite right. A little bit like when Kiko Casilla was outside the area with the ball at his feet. Your brain reacts very sharply. And this gentleman, just as you then turned your attention, this gentleman was whipping down his kecks and was obviously in desperate need. Hadn't managed to make it into the church or even to the hedgerows, the many hedgerows around the grounds, or even outside the grounds, outside the hallowed grounds of St Mary's Church, and instead had chosen up against the church wall to relieve himself. So you and I beat a very hasty retreat, so we didn't have to witness that scene. Shit story to end on, isn't it?
It is indeed. But I think it was essential to tell any Leeds United fans who are listening, who may live in the Sheffield area, you know what? If you're getting married at St Mary's Church, avoid the south wall.
Yeah,
Don't get any pictures in front of it.
Photos not around the back. No, photos
No.
at the front.
Yeah. That's everything on this week's episode of the Inside Elland Road pod. We'll be back next week as usual, and we'll discuss what has gone on after the West Brom game, previewing a trip to Pompey. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.